Get excited. You're listening to the very first episode of a brand new series called Natural Influencers. Join me as I interview extraordinary individuals and visionaries from around the globe who have a unique and profound influence on others and humanity. This was easily one of the most eye-opening interviews I've ever had the privilege of doing. Stay tuned. Welcome to Life Talks with Lex, a podcast where we keep it real, raw, and relevant as we explore conscious conversations about the human experience and all of life's conditions. I'm your host, Coach Lex, a self-development and leadership empowerment coach whose mission and passion is to bring more love, joy, peace, and empowerment to individuals on a real level. I have a heavy background in human services, psychology, mental health, behavioral health care, human design, astrology, and much more. I am so glad that you're here and hope you subscribe and stick with me through this season and beyond to be a part of the Conscious Collective. Hey everyone, glad to have you back and here for the first episode of a brand new series I know you're going to love. Today's guest is the truly influential Andrew Schoenfeld. Andrew is a licensed clinical social worker and author who's been practicing psychotherapy for the last 38 years. His unique psychospiritual approach has helped thousands of individuals treat and overcome their addictions, mental health disorders, relationship issues, and more. He's also just published a brand new book called The 7 Secrets of Psychotherapy, now available on Amazon. And I cannot wait to talk to him about that today. When Andy's not hard at work, he's busy playing jazz piano, being a dad, and enjoying his grandkids. Andy, thank you so much for being on the show. It's so great to have you.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
I know it's been a while, but I am so thrilled to catch up with you and chat with you about your new book. I gave an introduction of who you are and what you do, but you've had a career in psychotherapy that's spanned almost 4 decades. So tell us a little bit about that and how that journey began.
Well, I was a kid. I was living in Brooklyn, and I had to pay rent. So I decided I have no skill set. So I decided to go to college. At first, I was a music major, but then after a period of time, I decided that wasn't going to be cool. So I studied jazz piano with Mike Longo in New York City. And I got a degree in psychology. And after that, I had to pay rent. I had to pay the bills. So I was good at, talking, and I liked people. And so I decided I'd go to social work school. So I went to social work school because I could get a license. So if I wanted to move to a different city, a different town, I'd still be able to practice. And it was just, I had to survive, I had to pay the rent. So that's actually how it began.
It's quite a big undertaking for just paying the bills.
I didn't want to have a kind of life where I was going to do something that I might not enjoy. Also, I recognize that as you get older, if you do physical labor, that can wear you down.
Mm-hmm.
And I was more interested in the flow. When I was a kid, I went to therapy, and it was a lot like music. It had a flow to it. So I kind of like that. I kind of like that feeling. And but I didn't know at the time that there was something inside of me that was, in a sense, leading me to this. I didn't realize that part of myself for 30 years. I didn't realize. And so in retrospect, I could see that there was something inside of me. It's inside of everyone that kind of leads you to
Yeah.
something that where you're going to be able to create value. But it wasn't conscious. It wasn't anything I was consciously thinking. It was something I felt, but I couldn't identify what it was.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that feeling. As you said, I think it's something that it's that pull that we all have within us, and it's about either answering the call or not answering the call.
Yeah.
Clearly, you answered the call 38 years later, and you mentioned to me you've done something like 4 million minutes in
I've done about, excuse me, I've done about 70,000, more than 70,000 hours of therapy.
that
So if you break
is
that down, it's over 4,200,000 minutes in therapy.
wow. So that's a lot of people. I mean, seeing that many people over the span of your career, what have you learned? What can you tell us about human beings?
Well, there could be two parts to that question. What did I learn about human beings? But what did I learn about myself?
Mm,
Uh, to be able to pull something like that off for so many years and actually get results with people. And once again, this was not conscious. I just constantly innovated uh, my work. So it was just a constant innovation after innovation, and it wasn't like I took other people's ideas. Um, it was more like wanting to innovate ideas I had about life, and I was very influenced by Nichiren Buddhism. I started chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo when I was 24 years old, and at my first meeting, I remember asking someone, "Does anyone use this in therapy?" And they said no. So I went out and figured out how to turn all of that mystical stuff into English. So if there was anything that drove me, and once again, it wasn't anything I was thinking about. I didn't realize what I was doing. It was like, you're thirsty, so you go for water.
right.
I knew about Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, but I wanted to understand how it applied to daily life in more practical terms. And so, if there was any one driving force over 40 years that pushed me forward, it was understanding how to translate what you could consider to be mystical concepts into practical English.
That seems to have changed the game in terms of your approach in therapy because I know you to not be a conventional therapist. When we think about therapy and we think about seeing a therapist, we think about sitting on a couch or sitting in a room and talking about our feelings and unloading all of our past traumas and working through kind of everything that we know to be who we are and waiting for a diagnosis. But the approach that you bring to the table is this unique psycho-spiritual approach. Tell us how that's different from conventional therapy.
All right off the start, the only reason why, my opinion, the only reason why we use the word spiritual is because our science has yet to be able to understand what to us are mysteries of the universe. It's like, take the word love. It's said that love is the pervasive essence of the universe. Uh, that's a very simplistic understanding. Um, and so our scientific knowledge is so small that we use the word spiritual. If our science were a little more sophisticated, we'd be able to quantify the aspects of life that cause us to want to grow and to want to potentialize. If you could imagine the historical Buddha speaking, you could imagine life speaking. And one of the things that the historical Buddha said was, "This is my constant thought, how to cause all living beings to gain entry into the unsurpassed way and quickly acquire the body of a Buddha." It took me about, I don't know, 25 years, 30 years to begin to perceive what that could mean. And I came down to the conclusion that if life were speaking, life is saying that I work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to raise you to a higher condition.
Mm.
And so I came to the understanding that the way life gets us to pay attention when we're moving in the wrong direction is emotional disruption. No one finds emotional disruption satisfying. And so there's something within our life, there's something within all life. Anytime we accept limitation, anytime we put ourselves down or place ourselves above others, we're biologically designed to feel an emotional disruption. And so I had that understanding, but I was yet to understand the following concept. 99% of the time, we're not thinking. We're mindlessly listening to our subconscious
Okay.
as it wells up to our awareness.
I got to stop you right there because I want to address this book you just published, which is The 7 Secrets of Psychotherapy. Book has been out for less than a month on Amazon. It's already 5-star rated. What are these 7 secrets? You just mentioned something about our subconscious minds and us not really thinking. Tell us a
Well,
little bit about that. I mean, what are these secrets, these big secrets that they've been gatekeeping?
well, it's not so secret to certain aspects of the world community. When psychoanalysis started, it's my opinion that thousands upon thousands of years of sacred knowledge was tossed out because it couldn't be scientifically verified. And so a model of the mind was developed that focused on pathology. And by being able to understand what's wrong with us, we can move towards the holy grail of happy. And so one of the things that's well known to many people in the world is the idea that 99% of the time you are not thinking. If you say the alphabet in your head, you'll see that you hear something. You're not consciously doing it. All you did was give the direction. If I asked you, let me ask you, what did you have for dinner last night?
Pizza.
Did you just see a picture of a pizza?
Yeah.
That's how the system works. It's driven by images. The images are turned by the brain into language, which is called representational language. And if there's emotion associated with it, then you'll feel the emotion. Now, since the process happens beyond the speed of light, and since there is the element of feeling emotion, and since it happens in one's head, people are under the impression that they are thinking. But in my way of looking at it, it's not called thinking, it should be called listening. And what you're listening to is not consciously driven. So if you take the idea, the client goes to the social worker and talks about bad relationships and talks about losing jobs, talks about getting thrown out of an apartment. The social worker could easily say, my dear client friend, you're self-sabotaging. You're always getting in your own way. That's nuts because none of the operations of the subconscious are consciously driven. So saying that you're self-sabotaging is basically solidifying one's identification with their subconscious process. And so it's like, if I ask you, when you take a crap, do you consider yourself a crappy person? Most people say no, because you perceive it to be normal. But when our head craps, why do we make such a big deal out of it? Well, number one, we've been told what we hear in our head are our thoughts, and we are the ones doing it. That's a lie. That's not
Wow.
true.
Wow.
99% of the time, you're not consciously thinking, you're listening. Now, if you're unaware, if you do not have the clarity, you will mindlessly accept what you hear as a product of your intentional thought. Now, what's really important about that is the client goes to the social worker, and the social worker listens to the client speak about being upset, being sad, being anxious, not having relationships. And at the end of the session, the social worker, in order to get paid by insurance companies, comes to a diagnosis, comes to a conclusion. It's no different than the conclusions we come to when we're sitting around and saying, I'm a mess, I'm depressed, why am I so anxious? So the social worker gives the diagnosis of, let's say, a dysthymia, which is a type of depressive disorder, and also maybe a generalized anxiety disorder to go along with it. What the social worker is doing is solidifying that person's identification with subconscious processes. So it's nuts to use what I call mind vomit, the stuff the crap you hear in your head. It's nuts to use mind vomit to diagnose someone. Secondly, without understanding that 99% of the time we are not thinking, but we're listening, the client goes in here. I'll be the client, and you be the therapist, and you tell me what a normal, conventional reaction would be. So I come to you and I say, dear, I am a mess. My life is worthless. I just feel like I have no value at all. What would you say back to me?
Probably something along the lines of, where are you getting that from? And why do you think that? Why do you feel that way?
All right. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to pay attention to your sentence structure. Why do you think that way? If you're under the impression I'm thinking and you start engaging with that process, what you're doing is elevating subconscious mind vomit to the level of conscious intent.
Wow. Okay.
Now, that conversation can go on for months and
Mhm.
months
And
and
it
months
does.
without ever pointing out to the client that these are not your conscious, intentional thoughts.
Mm.
This is your subconscious speaking to you. You're under the impression that you're thinking because you hear it in your head and you feel emotions associated with it. Most of the time, people don't see the pictures that are behind it. They just feel the emotion, and they hear the stuff in the head. And so what the client is doing and what the therapist is doing can go on forever and ever without really ever coming to any clarity as to what's actually taking place.
It's mind blowing. And it's also unnerving a little bit, because I mean, we've been using this model of psychotherapy for ages and ages, and this is kind of the standard that we've accepted, right? I mean, as you say in your book, we learn at a very young age that we are the ones responsible for what's going on up there.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is that that's not the case. This is just a bodily function like any other bodily function that we really have no automatic control over.
Yeah. Until a person begins to gain clarity, which is possible, until a person begins to realize that what they're hearing in their head is not consciously driven, that content will become a source of endless complaint. So
Mm.
if let's say you have a person who's complaining that they can't find the right relationship. Well, the definition of complaint is wanting something, but having subconscious beliefs that say it's impossible. And so until one begins to peer inside what's taking place within their subconscious, until they come to some clarity that it's happening on its own, that it's not their fault, that it's there, there's not much anyone can do about it. What we're left with is the residue of these processes, subconscious processes, and we call them emotion. So our current world, the way I look at it, and I would just like to say, in no way, shape, or form am I disparaging social workers, APRNs, psychologists, psychiatrists, licensed family and marriage therapists, counselors. I deeply respect what they're doing. I'm merely trying to point out that the process of what we engage in our work can be done a little bit more efficiently and with a little bit more clarity. And efficiency is the important thing.
Right.
We're left trying to understand why we're emotionally messed up. That model is based upon a complete misunderstanding of the function of emotions. We spend billions of dollars a year on medications to make unpleasant emotions go away.
Mm-hmm.
One of the prime points of the book, The Seven Secrets of Psychotherapy, is that anytime you mindlessly, that means without awareness, anytime you mindlessly accept ideas that put you down or place you above others, you're biologically designed to have an emotional disruption. The
Okay.
emotional disruption is not to torment you, but to alert you to simple ideas about life. So the functional definition of anger is wanting more of yourself. Projected anger is when you're assuming that you're angry at other people. I'm angry because. We tend to blame the world or blame ourselves, and thus we become angry. Angry is an indicator that we want more of ourselves.
Wow.
Sadness is an indicator that we're having difficulty accepting a condition or a situation. Frustration is knowing better but not choosing. Uh, Guilt is misuse of the reflective system, your ability to reflect, take a look at what's happened in the past. And fear is falling so far down the vomit hole that any concept of potential is lost. These emotional reactions are designed to alert us to a basic mandate of our life: to grow, find some kind of balance, and potentialize the abilities that we have. Now, many years ago, there was a gentleman, I believe his name was Higgins, and I only read this after I wrote the book. I mean, I was just amazed that someone had something called discrepancy theory, because I call the process discrepancy. His idea was that we have ideals that we're not living up to. It's a psychological, my understanding was it was a psychological process he was speaking of. What I say in the book is it's not a psychological process. It's called a spiritual process, a spiritual phenomena. And once again, the only reason why I'm using the word spiritual is our science has yet to get to the point to be able to understand the parameters of how this process works.
So when you say spiritual, do you mean it's not something that we see or is tangible or is conceptualized up in the
It's life.
brain?
It's life. Life,
Okay. Okay.
it's life.
Okay.
Life will not allow us to accept a limitation without exacting an effect.
Oh, okay. Say that again.
Life will not allow us to mindlessly accept limitation without exacting an effect. Now, in the physical world, which is on the surface, if someone slaps you in the head, of course, you're going to be like, fuck you, ass, and get pissed off. But that's because our eyes look outward to the world. We have an inner intuitive world.
Yes.
The inner intuitive world is much different. Our inner intuitive senses are much different than our physical senses. They're kind of like them, but a billion times more powerful. In the inner intuitive world, life operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to help you potentialize your abilities. So it comes from something called the 14 Slanders. That was a document that Nichiren Daishonin wrote. He was a Buddhist sage in, let's say, around 1253 AD. And it's the essence of the Lotus Sutra, the last historical teaching of the historical Buddha. And the idea is that if you slander life, which the Lotus Sutra is basically life speaking. If you slander life, you're biologically designed to experience an effect. Why? Because you are life. You're a living representation of life.
Sure.
Now, without understanding this process, it's very easy to say we need to get rid of the unhappy emotions and get to the pleasant emotions. But that completely misses the point. Life is trying to alert us through these emotions that we have a potential that we're not using.
Whoa.
And that's basically the main essence of the book.
And in the book, there's a quote in the book, or just a section of the book, that you basically say that our ability to experience these emotions, and I love the way that you broke down the functional definitions of these emotions, because I mean, just anger, wanting more of ourselves, that blows my mind, first of all. But in the book, you say something along the lines of us experiencing these emotions are not an indicator that something is wrong with us. It's an indicator that something is right, that we're alive, that our body is functioning the way that it's supposed to.
I say it a lot more politely in the book, but in daily life, I say, you're not fucked up because you're fucked up. You're fucked up because something inside of you is not fucked up. It's called the unfuckable. And it's trying to get you to see, by leading you to feel fucked up, that in essence, you're really not fucked up.
Wow. All right. So our listeners that are hearing this and understanding that there is a huge difference between what we think we're thinking and what we're actually listening to, how do we begin to listen more selectively?
All right. The very first thing that I tell people to do after they come to see me is I say, go home and pay attention to everyone else vomiting. Go home and listen to everyone complain, bitch, moan, whine. Go home and pay attention to everyone that says same shit, different day. And just pay attention to the fact that it's not consciously driven. The more that you do that, the more you'll begin to catch your vomit spell. Once you begin to catch your vomit spell, you have the potential to experience what I call clarity. In one moment, you simultaneously, you'll hear horrible things in your head and you'll feel horrible emotions. And that exact moment, you'll hear a voice in your head that'll say, I didn't start that conversation. It's happening on its own. When that takes place, it's as if the vomit sounds like it's coming from another room, but the validity of the vomit is washed away, just like a fever is to a virus. The validity of the content that you're hearing in your head drops away. That experience is one of a lot of clarity, a high state of clarity. Now, to move on from there, clarity is only the first step. So we have a very simple formula that people listening to can write down. There are 3 words. It's real simple. The first word is problem. The second word is emotion. And the third word is called self-identification. Now, everyone knows what problems are, and we have the emotions that we use are anger, sadness, frustration, guilt, and fear. Now, the concept of self-identification. Self-identification is a conclusion you come to regarding yourselves. It's the mother who, after cleaning the entire house, comes home to see the place destroyed by her 4 kids, and she concludes that she's being used or being taken advantage of.
I know there's a whole bunch of people out there that can relate to that.
Oh, yeah.
Listen in, people. Listen closely.
Self-identification is not consciously driven. Now, the self-identifications that we're going to be talking about are called discrepant self-identifications, not negative. Discrepancy and negativity are two completely different things.
Okay.
Discrepancy is the energetic difference between your vomit and the potentializing force within your life.
Say
In
that
Bu-
again because we
di-
need that to land. We need that to
dis-
sink in.
Discrepancy is the energetic difference between your mind vomit and the potentializing force. In Buddhism, it's called your Buddha nature.
So your
Uh,
subconscious thoughts.
your mind vomit, your
Yep.
subconscious limiting beliefs that you
Okay.
mindlessly accept vibrate. Let's say they vibrate very dark. The
Yeah.
potentializing force within your life, let's say, is very, very light. It is a very light vibration. The energetic difference between those is a discrepancy.
Okay.
Discrepancy is the difference between two things. It's not negative. It's not a negative experience. We only call it negative because we mindlessly fall into the hypnotic reality that all of the subconscious processes create. Life doesn't mean to bum us out. It's trying to help us. So it's called a discrepant self-identification. So I'm going to ask you, I'll be the social worker and you can be the client. Give me a problem.
I'm feeling worthless.
Very good. Very good. What's the emotion that comes up along with it?
Despair.
Would that be anger, guilt?
Sadness.
Very good. Sadness. That's fine. Self-identification. Well, worthless could be a self-identification, but as a result of feeling worthless, how do you see yourself?
Probably like an unvalued member of society. What's the point in being here?
Very
I'm
good.
depressed.
Don't go emotions.
Okay.
Self-identifications are not emotions.
Okay.
Neither are problems. Problems are not emotions. Problems are like, I lost my car keys. I have no money. I can't pay my bills. Your self-identification sounds like invisible, not good enough.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so let's
Yes.
just as example's sake, we'll stay with that. So the problem and the self-identification are kind of the same. The emotion, sadness. Sadness is an indicator that you're having difficulty accepting a condition or situation or conditions and situations in your life. Now, I'm not going to ask you now, but what I would do is I would investigate what conditions or situations you're having difficulty accepting. And the reason why we'll find out, definitely. The reason why you're having difficulty with acceptance is you have a lot of mind vomit that comes up in regard to, let's say you're having a hard time accepting the fact that it takes years to build a business. So you feel like you're going backwards
Okay.
and it'll never happen. And
Mhm.
so the mind vomit keeps you from that type of acceptance. Then we have which all of these things lead to your self-identification. Not good enough, incapable. And so the three things that we're going to do is we're going to once again mention that your problem is mindless acceptance of limitation. Your emotion is not designed to torture you. It's not an indicator that you have a pathology. It's an indicator that life is speaking to you, trying to help you raise yourself to a higher level. Anger, sadness rather, is difficulty accepting. So the emotion is there to help you accept, to gain entrance into the limiting beliefs and be able to learn how to accept them, which is another process we'll discuss. Then we have our self-identification of worthless. So let's say we're working together right now. I'm going to introduce a concept to you. Uh, and this process here is not just going to take place in one session. This process here is going to take place after many sessions. You got to learn to get to know me a little bit. I have to learn to get to know you a little bit. So these things are introduced, like let's say over a 5, 6, 7 week period. But I'm going to introduce a concept to you called introspective practice. An introspective practice is where you learn to align yourself with your inner intuitive senses. Sounds complex, no different than daydreaming.
Okay.
It's no different than daydreaming. It's no different than focused visualization where you don't move your eyes. It's no different than staring at a candle and doing breathing exercises. It's no different than a process a gentleman named Paul Dennison created called the hookup for accelerated learning. He's the guy that does the brain gym. And the hookup is where you cross your ankles and your wrists and you silently repeat what are called goal statements. Goal statements or statements of goal. Goal statements are the things that you're looking to replace this concept of worthlessness. It's not necessarily affirmation work, though some people could say differently. It's being able to form a communication with your subconscious to try and teach it something new. And there are as many ways to communicate with your subconscious as you could never imagine how many different ways there are. The subconscious speaks in the present tense. It does not know of what's called negation. I will not be upset. Like little kids live in the subconscious world. So when you say, don't touch that, they touch it.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense.
The subconscious is pretty good with metaphors. It's a wonderful machine, and anyone can go online and take a look at some of the rules in discussing the subconscious. There's plenty of content online. I've developed my own kind of language to help people understand the work is done by 1, gaining clarity, 2, learning what your emotions are saying to you, 3, through problem, emotion, and self-identification, be able to solidify what you're looking to change. Maybe you're looking to see a goal statement of I accept myself. I see worth in my abilities. The next step is the communication through an introspective practice, which no different than a piano lesson. It's turned into something like muscle memory. The goal statements will be inoculated into your subconscious, and they will come up later. Now, this is something that you have to practice. Now, for me, I'm a Myoho Renge Kyo Buddhist. It's easy. I chant twice a day, every day. And I get into that state. And because of my practice, I basically have no conscious thought when I'm doing it. I just see what I'm looking for. And I just make the sound, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. But a lot of people, they're not going to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. They have to find an intuitive, an introspective practice. And it takes practice.
Right.
This is different than going to see me and venting.
Right.
Oy, what a pain in the ass, venting. We've become narcissistically preoccupied with our emotional crap, thinking that everyone has to treat us special because we've been injured, and everyone has to pay attention to our traumas. Remember, for a trauma to exist, you have to have a belief system that accepts the concept of trauma.
Okay.
It's not the past. It's not the past what hurts us. What hurts us is what we're doing in the present moment, and the hurt is not designed to torture us. It's designed to alert us to the fact that we're moving in the wrong direction.
Oh, okay. Wait a second. So, on that premise, right, if I'm someone who has had a significantly traumatic childhood experience, and I'm now an adult, and that experience has obviously had an effect on me. What you're saying is that in the present moment, even though not to decrease the significance or validity of what has happened, but what our subconscious brain does is it keeps that experience alive over and over and over again.
Yeah, you have beliefs. You have subconscious beliefs that support the concept of trauma. And I am not in any way, shape, or form. Like, let's take the concept of a chemical imbalance. Let's take the concept of someone being traumatized. I am in no way, shape, or form saying that in the physical world, that those things are fake. There are chemical imbalances in our brain. I'm just simply saying it's caused by discrepancy. In the physical world, there is tremendous suffering because of what others perpetuate on us. And so I'm in no way, shape, or form discounting people's suffering. I'm merely pointing out that the suffering is not from what happened in the past. The suffering is from mindlessly accepting what's happening in the present moment, which is the limiting beliefs going through one's head. Now, there is a vernacular statement that says, don't go there. One time I had a woman who suffered years of sexual abuse. And one day, and I knew her for years afterwards, and she stayed the same way. One day she said, I'm done. She says, coming to therapy, I'm only talking about my traumas, and I don't want to go there anymore. And so she said, I'm not going there. And that stuck. The introspective work, whether it's breathing, staring at a candle, visualization, getting into the flow state, and repeating over and over and over the goal statement that you're looking to achieve. That work literally teaches your subconscious to go to a different place when the stressor comes up. So in effect, by doing the work, naturally, you won't go there. You'll have a different perspective on that. And if I didn't do it successfully with lots and lots of people, I would say I have no right to say this, but I'm talking about like a lot of people I've seen be able to do this, and it's not a miracle. It's not anything mystic. We just don't have the science to understand it, but it does make the point that our suffering is not from what happened in the past. It's from what we're mindlessly accepting in the present. And the suffering is not designed to torture us. It's life trying to alert us to the fact that we should move in another way. The inner intuitive world is difficult for us to believe. Its validity is difficult for us to believe because we were told another lie.
Right.
The first lie is what you hear in your head, you're doing it. It's called thinking. The second lie is what you see in your imagination is not real. It might not be real to your physical senses, but to your inner intuitive senses, it is more real than one can imagine. It's in the inner intuitive senses, the inner intuitive world, that all types of potentials exist. I call them potential memories. You might have a memory of not having any money in your bank because you looked yesterday and you can't pay your bill today. But in the inner intuitive landscape, there are potential memories where someone gives you money, someone offers you another job, you have an inheritance come in the mail. That actually happened for one of my kids the other day. You're able to sell something. You come up with a new business plan. All of those potential memories exist inside of you. When you do the subconscious work, my opinion is you're not reprogramming the subconscious. You're tapping into a potential memory that actually exists there.
Wow.
The saying of the inner intuitive realm, the saying that I use is, there's nothing to create and everything to discover. Because in the inner intuitive realm, everything that could ever exist, will exist, or has existed in all of its potential forms is right there. So one just needs to learn how to play in the playground of all playgrounds to be able to make it come out into the physical world.
I'm a little speechless. I mean, that's so inspiring when you think about it that way, because it's like we have this infinite realm of possibility.
Oh yeah,
It's like inherent. It's there for us
yes, it is.
every day.
It's the reason why we suffer so much, because it's calling us constantly, 24/7. In the Nichiren Buddhism, it sounds like Maji Sazenen Igadiosu Jo Tokono Mujado Soko Joju Bushen. which means this is my constant thought, how to cause all living beings to gain entry into the unsurpassed way and quickly acquire the body of a Buddha. It's not so mystical when you break it down into simple language. Life will not allow you to accept limitation without exacting an emotional disruption, an effect. Good old discrepancy. Works every time.
So it's like an invitation. It's an
Mhm.
invitation for us to experience life in a different way,
Yeah,
experience
people
ourselves in a
people
different way.
people want to be spiritual and feel all good. People want to have that good feeling. You don't get there through a good feeling. You get there by understanding what's bad is not the opposite of what's good.
Mm.
They're two parts of one cycle. That cycle is the ultimate law. The ultimate law of life was identified by Nichiren as Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nam means devotion. Myo is the mystic element, unexplained force, the law of life. Ho is its manifestations. Renge is causality. Things take place in the inner intuitive world all at once. There's no linear time, so everything exists all at once. And Kyo is the realization that your life is the mystic law. You're a living, breathing, talking representation of the mystic law. Being able to understand that, you're never at a deadlock. You welcome obstacles. You create goal statements that are like, I will crush all obstacles. I embrace obstacles. I look forward to the challenge. It's a different headset, but you have to practice. You have to practice with the realization that your mind vomit is not your fault. You did not create it. You inherited it by coming into this world. What you brought into this world were your tendencies, the tendency to see things a certain way, which is a
Right.
little different. Not your fault. No one's fault for suffering. It's our opportunity to be able to rise above it. So this practice is very energetic, very vital, very forward-looking, embracing challenges. It's not anything where we're sitting on a hill, divorced from the harsh realities of our daily life. It embraces the harsh realities with the understanding that we feel shitty because something within us is not shitty. Something inside of us is always trying to see the silver lining inside the cloud.
I have chills. I absolutely love that. I mean, it's this knowing that everything in the human experience is interconnected
Oh yeah.
and it's purposeful, right? Like we're not going to go to therapy, for instance, and not expect to be human coming out of it and not expect to have human emotions from that point forward and not expect to not suffer or be
It's an
invited to
endless.
suffer.
It's an endless process. You'll achieve a moment of clarity. Um, you'll be able to do something that I call create an outcome, which is potentializing something within your subconscious and then using it with your physical resources, your psychological resources, your spiritual resources to create something tangible in daily life. We're all looking to create successful outcomes. We're too preoccupied with feeling good. So we miss the fact that we can create lives, we can create lives of real value to help ourselves, and more importantly, lives to create value to be able to teach and help other people.
Mm.
Your life is made out of a billion light bulbs, but you only have the switch for one light bulb. All the other switches for all your other light bulbs are found in the billions of people that are around you. You turn on your light, and then you teach someone to turn theirs on, and another one of your lights go on inside. And once again, I reiterate, I did not invent this. I chanted for 40 years to turn this stuff into English. In essence, this is Nichiren Buddhism, plain and simple. It's my interpretation of it. And there might be some people that say I've misinterpreted. I will gladly listen to them. But I did my best over 40 years to be able to use this knowledge in psychotherapy. The thing that I did at my very first meeting in 1984, how do you use this practically in daily life? And since no one else around me had the information, I sorted out myself. Literally thousands of hours of study and chanting. And put it this way, let's say someone's in their 30s listening to this. Well, I didn't get this stuff down until I was around 60. I had the information, but I didn't turn it so swiftly into language. And if a 30-year-old person is listening to this and they begin to practice, I guarantee, I bet my life on it, that through practice and through study, they're going to achieve a great outcome for their life. But it takes time. It does take time. Try, for the folks listening, try not to get ahead of yourself. If you're just learning this for the first time, you will learn how to apply it. But it, like I said, it takes time. You have to try and cultivate a goal statement of, I allow myself to grow. I allow myself to learn. I allow myself to potentialize my life. It takes time. It takes time and practice. It's like I'm a musician. I studied with Mike Longo, great jazz musician. A lot of the stuff that Mike taught me was like he had an example. There's music majoris and music minoris. Music majoris is music from the ether, from the heavens. Music minoris is music from the ego. When a musician is under the impression that they are the one writing the music becomes forced, chaotic. When a musician learns to listen from the ether, then they write down what they heard. In the book, first thing that said was heard and written down by Andrew Schoenfeld. There's no way I could come up with all this stuff. Going into the inner intuitive world, I heard things that were above the vomit. And everyone has that potential. This is not unique to me. Mike Longo used to say his thing was music that could free him. He said there are other disciplines and other ways to do it. Mike was a Baha'i faith. And so he used to say, Baha'u'llah, the prophet of the Baha'i faith, would say, through established techniques, one can glean the blessed beauty. You know, you have to practice. This takes work. Instead of just mindlessly complaining about things, you can do the work and it can help you create outcomes in your life. Now, is everything always smooth and glowing? No. Life is a harsh reality that we have to face with determination. The inner intuitive resources that we have has everything that we need. It's all inside. You have to put the work in to make it happen. It takes time.
Wow, that was beautiful. I love listening to you, Andy, because I know that part of your mission is really to educate people and give them access to this material so that they don't have to need you, so that they don't have to be in therapy, so that they can be their own therapist in a sense.
Exactly put. You know, teach a man, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and he'll eat for the rest of his life. The spiritual disciplines, which I use the word spiritual because our science isn't up to par. The spiritual disciplines that are available in the world are varied. There's many different religions or spiritual practices as there are types of fruit. Each one of those are valid. If a person chooses to use their own individual spiritual practice, then I applaud that. Everyone has their own way. There are a lot more roads than one that lead to Rome. And so the quest is to be able to develop an introspective practice that one does every day, twice a day.
Every day, twice a day.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, great. Well, thank you for doing the work of the universe and for being a a vessel of translation for some of what is the most profound wisdom I've ever heard. I'm sure our listeners could agree with that. Um, so Seven Secrets of Psychotherapy is out now. It's on Amazon. It is less than a cup of coffee. It is probably one of the best books that you will read all year, just based on the simple fact that it's going to change everything you think you know about reality, about what's going on in your head on a daily basis. I will link the book in the show notes. Andy, if people want to work with you one on one, can they just visit your website, andyschoenfeld.com?
I was born in 1960. I still use pencil and paper for things. My clinical notes are still written down with a pen. If anyone wants to contact me, my cell phone is 203 545 5459. It's the quickest way to get me. 203 545 5459. Send a text and leave a voicemail.
Perfect.
203 545 5459.
Okay. All right. So I'll link your cell number in the show notes. I'll also link your website in the show notes. And you can also find Andy on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Andy R. Schoenfeld, which will also be linked in the show notes. Andy, before we go, one last question for you. This is the first episode of a series I'm calling Natural Influencers, and I have the privilege of interviewing people like you who are out there in the world having a profound impact on people every day. What is your vision for the next year?
Well, one thing I'd like to do is we should have an interactive show where people call in, and then we can start to help people learn how to use problem, emotion, self identification. That's called the model of self identification. Be able to help them understand their mind vomit and just start to direct them in a correct way. And I'd like to replicate that in a bunch of different platforms. And I'd like to go out and speak to people, other than seeing people individually. That after the 4 millionth minute of sitting and talking to people, therapists age like dogs, so I'm probably like 400 years old by now. So just to talk, get the information out. I have another book that we're sending query letters to, called Tales from Candyland. It's the same information done through a Judeo-Christian language. It's a story about a little boy named Avraham and a guy named Michal, who owns a candy store in Brooklyn. And it's the same information. It's just spoken through a different language. Yeah. And I have a jazz opera I wrote, which is people are looking to help me produce. So I have a couple of projects in the works, but I'd love to do the interactive show with you.
I love that. I am so up for it. We will for sure explore that. You guys heard it here first. Don't be surprised if you see a call-in show on the horizon. So thank you so much, Andy. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm so grateful that you joined me here today. This is a very special episode.
Well, I'm real proud of you. You're doing it. I can't say enough about you. You're just a great, vivacious spirit. You've always been that way. And now you're creating a great outcome for your life. And so I give you a lot of congratulations on that. And thank you for having me.
Oh, my sincerest appreciation. And thank you to you, who has been a huge influence on me as well. So andyschoenfeld.com, 7 Secrets of Psychotherapy. Get it now on Amazon, linked in the show notes. Andy, thank you so much. And until next time.
Thank you, dear.
If you enjoyed today's episode of Life Talks with Lex, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. To stay current on all the latest from Coach Lex, you can find me on Instagram at Alexis Christie Coaching, or shoot me an email, alexischristiecoaching@gmail.com, with any comments, questions, concerns, or topics you'd like to see explored on the show. I look forward to hearing from all of you, and I look forward to the next conscious conversation.